I assume that worked for you.
I clapped.
I see a little fun little thing in my audio feed.
Yeah, there's a spike in my audio.
Yeah,
Or
Yeah.
there's a spike.
That's how the clap's supposed to work. That's how I can locate.
Wait, is that how the clap actually helps people? Did it do that?
Yes. That's how
you line
the
up
whole
the
purpose
waveforms.
of the clap is to sync up the audio.
I thought they were just trying to make sure it was a mic check.
No, because if you want a mic check, you just speak gibberish into it.
Oh,
Gibbity boo.
I didn't realize that it
Just
it's
scat.
actually okay. I didn't realize that. I thought it was just like a sound thing, like a designated sound exercise. I can hear Braden rolling his eyes, being judgmental.
So
feel it.
I've been watching What Does Your Problem for several years, and it's convinced me that to have a successful podcast, you have like a really strong group dynamic. You need the subject matter expert, the angry guy who gets bleeped, and the anxious trans woman. So what I'm trying to say is, ZP, have you ever tried HRT?
If we want an anxious trans woman, we have M.
Oh, okay, there you go.
Hello, good people, and welcome to another spine-tingling episode of Off the Deep End. I'm your spook master, twitch.tv/ArbitraryWater redacted. Is that... No. Joining me, as always, is, the ghoulish Chris ZombiePie redacted.
I see that Braden has developed a stunning sense of humor that would make Tom Hall proud.
But furthermore, we have one more horrific, fiendish friend to join us. Why, it's Adam Borgmaster redacted.
I owe so many loonies to all the wrong people.
That's right. All the loonies to wrong people. It's Halloween in August, I think is the bit I came up with roughly a millisecond before I started saying it. And this is Off the Deep End, a Deep Listens podcast where we cover role-playing video games in depth. Sometimes we cover the depth of role-playing games. Sometimes we delve into role-playing.
And sometimes we do an audible and just do the tip of the iceberg.
And I did buy a hard the hardback Keep on the Borderlands reimagining that was made for 5th edition. So I have my Gygax cred fully in hand.
So,
And I mean, I play a role every day of my life.
yeah, you play a role, therefore it is a role-playing game.
You play a role in your daily life. You exist in the context of all that came before you. You didn't just fall out of the coconut tree. And the same goes for Off the Deep End. You can support us on patreon.com/deeplistens. $3 will get you an installment in the Deep Listen slush pile. And maybe that monthly anime podcast that ZP and Pete and I are doing. Maybe you'll get access to that. Who's to say? Anything else? Do we have any other housekeeping?
Is there a name for that anime podcast?
I mean, the OG-san cast was one of the suggested names.
Yeah, someone here has suggested that, right?
I have no idea.
I don't
whose
know
idea
how
that
I
was.
feel about it on the tip of my tongue.
OG-san's.
OG-san cast.
Yeah, someone gave this idea to the rest of the Discord, and everyone seems to like it.
Some Koitsimo Doitsimo.
The OG Song Cast anime review show. I don't know. I don't know. Maybe we should ask the person who came up with this idea to give us a jingle or some shit.
Yeah.
A jingle? You don't want me getting musical.
We are old and we like anime. We were around in the 2000s, okay. We like to watch stuff that is old, not like the stuff that you like.
Bravo.
Yeah, that's my anime show jingle.
Yeah, just a few touch-ups, it'll be good for Broadway.
Yeah.
I mean, have you seen Love Never Dies?
No.
Am I right, my phantom heads? I've never seen Love Never Dies. Anyway, why are we here?
Because I was given power.
That's right. Chris, you picked this video game, Anachronox,
by
Ion Storm.
And again, I'll go through my reasoning here. Is we have been partaking in Giant Bomb's Blight Club, and the current edition, as of the recording of this podcast, involves a one Jeff Grubb playing Daikatana and having a miserable time. I would say I think we would all agree that it does not appear that Jeff Grubb enjoys or likes Daikatana. And that is not to say that any of us here believe it's a good game, but we've kind of all made our own little interpretations of what we've seen, and that is, I don't know if it's that bad. And I thought, hey, remember when Ion Storm had 2 branches? Remember when Ion Storm existed in 2 cities? One team was making, venerable genre-defining works with Warren Spector, Deus Ex, and Thief,
and
Deadly Shadows.
Thief, Deadly Shadows.
That's
and
Ion
Deus Ex
Storm.
Invisible War.
Yeah, we don't talk about that one. But Ion Storm Austin.
Yeah.
And then, people forget that while Daikatana was definitely the big product of Ion Storm Dallas, the other Ion Storm, it was not the only game from Ion Storm Dallas, because prior to that there was Dominion Storm Overgift 3, which was basically just a continuation of, you don't give them too much credit there. But then after Daikatana, they released this little old game called Anachronox, and it was led by someone who we'll talk about more, which is Tom Hall. So, believing that, we should jump on this, I guess, renaissance of Ion Storm appreciation, or at least Ion Storm consumption. Let's call it consumption.
Yeah.
I picked Anachronox.
Came out June 27th, 2001 for the personal computer. It was published by IDOS and did not save Ion Storm Dallas from being shut down almost immediately afterwards.
Yeah, they got shut down less than a month later. I think they were already packing up their desks.
Oh yeah, no. This was very much the case of IDOS saying, you need to ship this. Give us what you have.
And not just to say that the game didn't sell well, it sold very poorly. I read the article by Vice when 4 months after its initial launch, 40,000 copies, which, as we'll talk about shortly, this game had a very tortured and long development cycle. And by the time the game finally made it to Oceania, Ion Storm was basically already dead because it didn't release in Oceania until 2004. And as a result, IDOS released it as a budget game at $20. $19.99, or their equivalent.
Eidos, a notably well-run publisher, definitely not known for making a lot of very bad decisions that would eventually lead to them getting bought by Square Enix. Another bad decision.
So are you trying to say that Anachronox found a second life in Australia?
Maybe the Australian, maybe Down Under. It's like the British and Dizzy, I think. Or
because Australians love Rise of the Triad, right?
Yeah, Australians love Rise of the Triad. So, Tom Hall.
Yeah, this is probably where we're going to start, is the person who basically led this project was Tom Hall, who had joined Ion Storm basically during its inception.
He founded Ion Storm with John Romero.
He was also one of the 4 founders of id, right? Or
yeah.
Yes, that's right.
So Tom Hall.
He worked on Commander Keen and Wolfenstein 3D and Doom. And then they shoved him out the door because they didn't like any of his ideas. Read Masters of Doom. It's still a great book.
During his time at id Software, he always had the reputation of having a very unique sense of humor that oftentimes clashed with John Carmack and Adrian Carmack's desire to make Doom more of a horror game, traditionally a horror game. And then 2, he was just an ideas guy. Like, you got to give him credit.
Yes.
Some of the things that he wanted to do were later somewhat vindicated, like shading and shadows and how to make Doom more of a 3D game. But he was like the I don't mean this.
He was the engine. He was an engine guy, right?
Yeah, he was an engine guy. He really liked the technology and he had really good ideas. And I don't mean this condescendingly, but in a lot of ways he reminds me of like George Lucas, like pitching these ideas to people who could make them happen. Indiana Jones. And finally with this game, he basically was given, I don't know if it was like carte blanche, but it's pretty much near that, right, Braden?
Free reign.
He was given his own little team.
Right? Yeah, they gave him a dozen people and said, "Do you?"
Yeah, do whatever you want. We are going to do a lot of drugs and play Tekken 3 and not finish Daikatana in a reasonable time frame.
And you know what? Even though it took way too long, the development tools they made for Anachronox apparently immaculate.
Yeah, it's a technically impressive video game.
Yes.
But it still was functioning under a very dysfunctional Ion Storm. Let's be very clear, the side of Ion Storm that was deeply dysfunctional.
The main studio, quote unquote.
For all intents and purposes, it sounds like Warren Spector had his division totally tight-lipped, on budget.
They made
at least
Deus
2 games
Ex
that were very good. But yeah, I mean, Anachronox was supposed to be their attempt to make an RPG, and Tom Hall had a lot of different beads that he was pulling from or like using. He was always very honest that he had played Final Fantasy VII and Chrono Trigger and was like, well, what if we made a console RPG like me? Like what our studio aims for, which is not a terrible idea, not a horrible idea, because the console RPG was not really a big, huge thing. And their publisher, Eidos, had already bought the contracts to port Final Fantasy VII and 8. So they were probably interested at the idea, oh, you want to make one of those, but it's a CRPG team? You guys got it. We'll give you the okay, we'll be your appointment. But early on in the development process, Tom Hall made what I think is the first true mistake, which is he decided to use the Quake 2 engine. And that is not to say that I hate Quake 2 or Quake in general, but that is not an engine to make an RPG.
It's really good for Quake 2. And maybe some other games that use the Quake 2 engine. Maybe not Daikatana, even if I don't hate Daikatana. But
so what engine should they have used to make a CJRPG, a JCRPG?
Honestly, like they should have been having this kind of like first-person shooter movement and animation priority system, and like the weird way that you have object interaction and sometimes even it's kind of frustrating and janky in this game. And as graphically impressive as this game is, another big mistake is he's really trying to make this game feel cinematic. And that includes a lot of weird camera angles during battles. It's all one continuous shot when it transitions or moves the camera from your action to the action of the enemies to the actions of your co-companions. And the camera's just constantly whirling around. And part of the reason for that is apparently he watched a couple of Hitchcock films and was like, well, he uses long takes. What if I use long takes to make this cinematic dynamic story?
And also, it was the 90s, so everyone loved Dutching the camera. And they Dutched this camera so much.
They, you can tell that they saw the way battles played out in Final Fantasy 7 and 8 and said, no, we can do better. We can have an unbroken take of all of these animations. And it turns out there's maybe a reason why Final Fantasy will cut the camera when you are doing a special animation.
But to go back to your point, Borg, like, it's not unheard of them possibly making something from in-house, because the game's scripting language was actually something that Tom Hall custom built for this game. He called it APE, Anachronox programming language. So he even modified and made his own programming language to make this game.
Yeah, and that's what I was saying. Like, the custom dev tools they made, apparently, they were immaculate. Like,
yeah,
great. Like, A+ custom dev tools on top of the Quake 2 engine in a 2001 video game.
Like, he found a way to mush together C, Basic, and Java for video game development. So, good on that. Like, people have talked about how that alone, he should have just sold that instead of a video game.
I'll say, to the game's credit, I didn't have to do anything to get it to run. Which is not always the case with these older games, even ones that are re-released on GOG and Steam. We've shared plenty of instances, but I didn't have to do anything to get this to run the way I wanted it to in a window.
And he has his own interpretation of stats in an RPG, and I found... You two will get a kick of this. I found a quote about, why do you have, like, all of these weird stats, and why are they all categorized as very good, bad, yada, yada, that? And it's basically, I looked at D&D and said, what do all of these numbers actually mean? I mean, one of the things I hate about RPGs is you've got, like, here's this thing, and here's that thing, and it's like, this is 52, and that's 53, so what's the difference? It's like, okay, it's a point. And the formula will come up to be like 2 points, and like, sure, that's going to make a difference. So now I have to hit this guy 3 times, yada yada, you get the idea. What if I just tell them, good, bad, not so good? Now the problem is he decided to have fun with his stats, so you got things like beat or beefiness. And because it's not using common pre-established vocabulary, you just look at this stat sheet in the game and it's like, what am I even looking at?
Now, listen, beat is your to-hit modifier, while beefiness is the amount of damage you do.
This might be one of, if not the worst, of what we have played for this podcast. This might be the worst UI UX we have seen in a video game. It's
don't
up there.
think that's true.
What is above this game?
I mean, does Anachronox have a sincerity and love meter that is inscrutable?
Just think about the menu and the way that it's formatted and the way that it looks. Like, it might be one of the worst design menu systems I've ever seen.
I think it is of its time.
It's pretty bad, but not the worst.
I don't think it's great.
I don't think it's the worst ever, but of what we have played so far,
I have Unlimited Saga.
But anyways, so this game debuted in 1997 in E3. You can even find the debut trailer from 1997. And this and Daikatana had exhausted their initial budget of $13 million, which we might look at that amount of money and say, haha, that's nothing compared
that's
to
like
The Last
how
of Us.
much it cost to make Kratos' beard.
But that was a lot of money back in the day for just 2 video games. And in order to keep both of those projects, Daikatana and Anachronox, afloat, Eidos basically bought a controlling stake in the company. And I think Anachronox exceeded like $4 or $5 million in production after like 2 years. And you can kind of see where they went with the money, because it looks good for something that was made 97, 98, and then came out eventually 2001.
It has like facial animations, and I think this game actually looks pretty sharp still.
When the camera isn't flying everywhere.
I like it when the colored lighting happens, because Quake 2 engine.
There is one problem, though, as you guys saw while I was trying to play this game.
Oh, don't worry. I also had this problem. Not as bad as you, but this game has a brightness problem.
Yeah, even when you set the gamma to outrageously high to just brighten everything up, because this game has, like, the weird Quake, darkness and shading to make it moody and kind of like a horror first-person shooter, you needing to navigate these RPG sandboxes,
these dingy, run-down space environs.
It's miserable, and there are times where you're just walking in a black void of nothingness, because that's just how the shading and the dynamic.
And maybe that was easier to parse on a CRT, but I don't have a CRT.
And it's one of many examples of this was a first-person shooter team trying to make an RPG, because there's a lot of Quakeisms and Doomisms in this game,
yes,
which make no sense in a game like this, because there are a lot of pseudo-invisible walls, like opening a door to talk to a quest giver. There's nothing really marked. In-game codex is terrible. The journal and mission log is awful. And it has a terrible map.
There's definitely some intentionality, especially in that first planet, to be kind of hard to navigate. So this is where I'm going to posit something that I've already posited to you when you were playing through this game. I don't think this game is actually that much of an RPG.
No.
You barely do any combat in it. I would say this is secretly way more of an adventure game than it is an RPG.
Sure.
Because it's like 10% combat.
It's 10% combat, and I don't think we actually explain what kind of combat this is. This is a turn-based Final Fantasy-like
you like ATB
system.
bars?
Although, frustratingly, the ATB system in this game doesn't allow for a wait option. It is active battle no matter what. So if you try to mull over your attacks and your moves, the enemies will just attack you, and they'll keep attacking you.
Yeah.
But there's also field position as well. So it's ATB plus semi-tactics. Chicanery.
And that mechanic really works.
Yeah, because you'll kill all of the front row enemies.
Let's talk about the combat.
Yeah.
While we're here.
You mean the beating?
The beating. Very good at beat sticking, beefiness, something. So you have a party of 3 active characters at any given time. There are, 9 characters total? Is that right?
Yeah.
8 or 9?
There's the colors, remember? Connected.
Yes.
With the color system.
There's Sly, there's Grumpus, there's Pal.
Roboman, the Robot, Democritus, Stiletto, and Paco.
Yeah.
Uno.
So, you have a decent-sized cast, and they all have their own little specialties. And
which all fall in the pastiche and...
yes.
Like CRPG or JRPG roles?
A little bit of the JRPG roles. You get the sense that Grumpos, one of his first special techniques is to heal the entire party with an age. There's just a problem with these roles in that, all of the characters that do direct damage are annoying to use in the combat system because the minute that you've destroyed all of the front row characters or enemies, you have to waste a turn to move them to their next target. So all of the characters that can just shoot from a distance are immediately better and easier. People who hit things with sticks or their... So yeah, it's a Final Fantasy combat system with a tactics movement system. And the way that you go about improving your items and your equipment, honestly, is very reminiscent of finding weird collectible goodies in secret rooms in Quake and Doom. Except... why would you do that in an RPG? Goodness gracious.
It's a lot of this game, Final Fantasy will have hidden items and good stuff hidden behind invisible walls. I would say Anachronox is maybe the most guilty of this. It's fine because the game is not that difficult and the combat is not especially difficult. Especially if you just sandbag your turns and just unload on one enemy at a time.
The problem is like the combat, Braden, feels like a complete afterthought. Like it feels like a placeholder.
It feels like a first draft. In the same way that Ultima 9's combat, which is literally clicking on a guy, feels like they used what they had. Anachronox's combat feels like they said, okay, let's make it like Chrono Trigger, and then didn't really think beyond that. It feels very slapdash.
There are a lot of moving parts too. Sorry, you can go ahead.
There's also a sense of you can tell it was made by people who had never made an RPG or never been involved in an RPG combat system before. Because, we want to do ATB and to have field movement and to do all these things that we've seen from all these games we've played. And just do it all at the same time. It'd be the ultimate RPG system. It's a kind of beginner's hubris that they just never whittled down or refined into something better.
Yeah, and it just, there's a lot of parts. There's a lot of moving parts to the combat system. We've already talked about the weight, but there's a magic system. The magic system is not introduced until the second or third environment in the entire game. So that's hour 3 or 4 before you finally get to cast spells.
Their materia equivalent.
And then it's not until the halfway point that you have the weird the magic system is called Mistech, and it's basically materia. It's color coded. Certain spells do certain elements or certain status effects, and each of your characters, their portrait has a color next to their face that shows you their preferences and their elemental attunement. If you give someone who's red a blue materia, they will be not so great at using that, and you won't necessarily be able to use the best abilities there. If you give them their perfect match to their element, they will get you everything plus a little bit. But on top of that, there's a custom spell system which uses bugs and flowers that
the
you're picking from.
The materia is bugs.
It turns out the materia is bugs, and this whole new combat option is past the halfway point of the game. And so they spread all of these weird, obtuse mechanics across such a large continuum of time that it becomes very painfully obvious that this is the first part to what was meant to be a franchise or a series. And I think Tom Hall has made it as clear that he at least wanted to make 2 games. So this is like episode 1 of a trilogy.
Yeah.
And it starts to really feel like this is just a warm-up to something that is supposed to be bigger.
And that takes you to the story and the writing of the game. Which,
Yes.
before we get into the writing and the Tom Hallisms, I just want to say, the name Anachronox, when you look up why it's named Anachronox, the idea was it's combining the words anachronism and noxious. Because there's ancient aliens who died of a plague, like involved in the lore and the setup. Here's the thing. Anachro is not a prefix. It's 2 pieces. Ana, which is before, Chron, which is time, and Nox doesn't mean illness or poison. It means night, like equinox.
Yeah.
So,
Get better at Latin, nerd.
the name doesn't mean what the name means. It makes me want to reach back in time and slap the pen out of his hand when he's writing that.
Listen, this is the guy responsible for Rise of the Triad, and listen, if there are any Rise of the Triad enthusiasts in the listening audience, I respectfully disagree. I think Rise of the Triad is fucking garbage and always
racist,
was.
Kind of maybe a little
Weird.
racism.
Your weird pseudo sequel to Wolfenstein 3D plays like shit, but it's got jump pads. Instead of God mode, it's dog mode. Like the one good thing I can say about Rise of the Triad is that the otherwise terrible 2014 revival of Rise of the Triad directly led to New Blood and games like Dusk and Amid Evil. So hey, at least the people working on that figured it out.
I mean, Tom Hall named a character in Rise of the Triad IP freely, so you know he has an immaculate sense of humor.
Yeah. So, what if he had 30 hours to give you his writing? Because, once again, to be clear, there isn't that much combat in this game. This game is way less RPG, fighting, and more talking.
It's kind of as you said when you watched me play this game. He should have just made an adventure game. If he wanted this to be like the Tom Hall-ism delivery system, just make a point-and-click adventure game. I realized that genre was starting to completely fall off by the early 2000s, but they could have made an adventure game, guys.
Yeah, because the adventure game format would have been way sturdier of a foundation for him to espouse all of his ideas about democracy.
Yeah,
very funny. It's a very funny joke. This was pre 9/11. Francis Fukuyama, the end of history.
Yeah, history's over. There's no more history.
Yeah, there's no more history. That's what we learned in 1992 was that history was over.
But what about what do they call the collectible items you can find in the background?
Tacos.
Tacos. And what does taco stand for?
Totally arbitrary collectible object. Get it? It's making fun of collectibles, but also one of your party members gets their best skills by you collecting tacos, so they're not actually useless. You've undermined your own point, video game.
You undermined your own joke.
And like collectibles weren't even an RPG thing. That was more of a platformer thing.
No, not at all. Right? So he's aiming a target on a platforming in an RPG.
And there's no platforming in this, right? There's no platforming in this, right? I don't think
because there's no jump button. You can't jump, which is really frustrating when you're trying to like walk through guardrails or
ramps. There's some obnoxious navigation, but
so out of curiosity, our first 2 characters are Sly, who's in a cheap apartment above a bar, and he's a down on his luck detective who apparently owes money to the evil crime boss mafioso guy Dita, and is told to find a job with Grumpos, and Grumpos takes us on this adventure to find
ancient alien technology.
It is what, hour 3? Because I think
it is. You do not get your third party member.
You don't get the
Bhaal
robot.
18.
Yeah, you don't get... Actually, you even go through 2 dungeons with just 2 characters. You get multiple occasions where the only combat is walking around in town and just getting these goons
Getting jumped
attacking
by thugs.
Sly. But the first dungeon is the one in the junkyard. And then the second dungeon is the one when you're with Grumpos trying to get the Mistech thing, the linchpin for the entire universe ending. Spoilers. But you're listening to a podcast, so it's not spoilers. We warned you. So 2 dungeons on the starting planet across 4 hours. 5 hours. That's it. That's the combat. And the combat has fixed intervals of enemies.
It's not random encounters. They are all fixed encounters.
So there's so little combat in the first 5 hours of this game, right?
And that'd be great if the parts where you moved around and talked to people didn't feel like occasional fetch quests or goofy bits. This game loves making you go on a wild goose chase or do some sort of pathetic menial task in order to make progress. And part of that is like, oh, it's a joke. Get it? That's the point. RPGs make you do dumb things. But
and then it has
How do you feel about this game's writing? Because I felt like by the end of my time watching you play through the whole thing, I played through like the first planet. That's as far as I got. I felt like I had mostly turned around on it, in that it's like, okay, you have heart, you have moxie. These cutscenes have cinematic ambitions, even if they're woefully underserved by the engine tech that is using them. But there's a lot of I'm not gonna say it's cringy, because I'm too old to be allowed to use that word, but a lot of the humor in Anachronox, I would say, is a little too goofy and a little too like, haha, look how funny it is that this thing is random.
The feel that I got was that it has cinematic ambitions, but the cinema it's trying to be like is a mid-career Adam Sandler movie.
It's trying to be both a goofy goof 'em up, because it's Tom Hall, who likes to do goofs, but also it's trying to be like this semi-serious RPG adventure,
Like it
with
wants
a little bit of, noir shit in it.
It wants you to take the lore very seriously, but it's also trying to be satire of question mark at the same time.
The old man's character, his special interaction ability is to yammer at someone until they fall asleep or leave. That's his map ability.
So you're supposed to take it seriously and not take it seriously at the same time.
Characters have Paper Mario-esque navigation abilities, by the way. Sly can lockpick, Grumpos can yammer, Pal 18 can hack, Democritus has a tractor beam, so on and so forth.
Because someone played Final Fantasy VII and said, you know what? I think we can make the minigames in Final Fantasy VII, but better and more enjoyable. And we're going to do that.
And more frequent.
By making them more frequent and more of a necessity.
I mean, that coin flipping mini game. You had a great time with that, right?
Oh, it's terrible. Some of them are better than others, obviously. Some of them are just like they're redemption machine games that I've seen countless times before. But yeah, the ones that are frustrating suck. And also, they just slow your progress to a crawl, because here you are playing Pipe Dream to hack in a terminal, and it's just Pipe Dream. It's just taking up your time, and you got to do it. I would say the weird thing about those minigames is they highlight another problem with Anachronox, which is it's a computer game-ism of this era of very necessary pieces to the environment are very tiny little bundles of pixels and 3D textures that you have to like scour and know what you're looking for.
Finding the healing items on the ground.
They
so
are tiny.
Little tiny soda cans, basically.
And then when you unlock the bug interface, the way that you level up your bugs to make better and more powerful spells are flower petals. And those flowers are tiny. They're like infinitesimal in the grand scheme of things. And here you are needing to try and like look at every little corner trying to find them.
I mean, we're all infinitesimal in the scheme of things.
But to go back to your point about the story, it's very awkward because it's trying to be funny, and then it's trying to be introspective, and it's also trying to be a superhero.
With actual superheroes at one point.
Yeah, with an actual superhero.
They're superheroes from the planet Krapton.
Get it?
Get it?
Do you get it? Hey, ZP, do you get the joke?
Yeah,
it's Krapton.
Yeah, it's like Krypton, but it's crap. But like that leads to like another weirdism there, which is like our former superhero Paco, who were on this alien ship that we got kidnapped from, and that whole thing is just a huge side tangent, side quest, like filler episode, because it doesn't further the plot. It's just there to just take up time. Like you find out that Paco is a down on his luck alcoholic who forgot how to use his powers because his comic book series got canceled, and he's developed depression in this game about a goof trying to stop the end of the world.
Yeah.
The end of the universe.
The end of the universe.
Because of the other universe. There's multiple universes.
Oh my god, the story in this game. It spends so much time on this kind of, I wouldn't call it intolerable, but it's sophomorish, right? Like this sophomorish humor. It spends most of its time conveying this sophomore humor, and then it decides, oh wait, this is a big deal. It's
you're the chosen one.
You're the chosen one. Alternate dimensions, looming infinite evil. You go get them. Kill them. Kill the bad guys. But also, it's time to do 2 sequences on the planet of Democritus, and then also comic book, and also the end of the game is about stopping evil mobster dude from cloning super soldiers, which has nothing to do with the main plot, but we just decide to do that, and then the game ends.
Lizzie, stopping the mob boss is important when you get to the third part of the story after the second game. And in the last act, it'll make a lot of sense once they release Anachronox 3.
So what are some of the highlights? I think that the big one that everyone really has, all three of us has an opinion of. So you blow up a planet doing Roboman's experiments, and then whoops-a-daisy, did a science experiment.
It was an accident.
Blew up a planet, and no one's got any form of, PTSD or anything.
It's fine. We didn't do that.
There's that weird bit where they're on the ship and they're annoying each other because they're just stuck,
waiting for rescue.
And then we land on the planet.
That bit is pretty funny.
That bit is pretty funny. Another bit that's pretty funny is when you and Grumpos are doing like the good cop, bad cop thing, trying to find out where to find this Mystech, right? But then you land on Democritus. And this is when Tom Hall decided to give his ideas on why humans don't actually deserve democracy and elections are pointless. And
it's some very let's say once again Clinton administration adjacent humor. Some real it predates that South Park episode by 3 years.
So the mission here is that in order to prove yourself worthy of the High Council of Democritus, you need to vote correctly on all of the critical issues that are currently in vogue with this election cycle. And you got to do this by talking to people, which is not easy because there's basically like 3 or 4 different parts to the planet of Democritus, and the characters that you need to, especially easy to find. Some of them are just stuck in like off corners that are just, you would only go there the game because you made it. And as we go through it, it's just like oh, this is the stand-in topic for this planet for the issue of abortion. This is the stand-in topic for the issue of gay marriage. Funny, right?
I'm sure it's
not
was very
that far
funny.
off. It's not that far off from reality, even though this is the future.
I'm sure it was very funny in Dallas, Texas, in the late 1990s to make those jokes.
I'm sure Tom Hall has all kinds of opinions on PC culture.
He seems, for what it's worth, he seems totally fine.
Oh,
on that front,
really?
Compared to, let's say, some other id alumni,
Sandy Peterson,
Tom
John
Hall
Carmack.
seems like he's ended up on the better end of things.
Yep.
Romero too.
Yeah. Well, Romero, I just wish that.
I just wish John Romero would make games that are good again. Empire of Sin is not very good. Hey, those Doom wads he made though, A++.
So, but the big reveal with completing our mission on Democritus is that the planet has voted that we deserve a reward for everything that we've done there. And what is the reward?
They shrink the planet down to a small chibi size, and it follows you around like a party member.
And the few times...
And it attacks with lasers.
Yeah, the few times that people in the world recognize that you've got this miniaturized planet as a party member are really good. They're really,
very
really
funny.
good.
Chrono Cross has its share of weird and wacky party members, but none of them are planets.
No. And then also this, unfortunately, immediately transitions to what I think is the cringiest part of the game, which is we need to get Stiletto. And Stiletto is in the red light district of Sunder Station. And that includes some parts of Sunder Station that aren't great.
Let's just say they put a lot of work into animating Sly Boots dancing, let's say.
You gotta go to some stores, and one of them's the Orange Navel. One of them's Cold Sweat Sex Machine. But the big environment you need to go to is called Sluttopia.
It's very funny. You can hear the laughter in my voice.
Apparently, like, Tom Hall showed the animation of Sly Boots, like, pole dancing to show, hey, look, yeah, I'm willing to, like, I took the guy and I made him do the fan service. Isn't that funny? Like, he personally invented that whole... Also, he did all of the scripting for Boots' erotic dancing minigame.
Sure.
He did it on his own.
There were only like 12 people on that team, so yeah, that checks out.
That's, of all things, that's what Ion Storm showed of Anachronox in E3 2000.
Yeah.
That's what they showed to say, hey, the project's still alive.
What else would you show in the year 2000? The PlayStation 2, Deus Ex, Diablo 2.
They showed a pole dancing Sly Boots.
He's this extremely down on his luck noir detective / smartass doing the pole dance. Do we have any favorite characters other than the literal planet that is following you around?
Are you asking, like, which characters have personalities?
Yes, do you like any of the characters in this video game filled with writing?
So,
like, I think the voice acting is actually...
Oh, yeah, I think the voice acting's great.
Like, very good, especially for 2001. Like, above board for the standards of the time. Compared to fucking Deus Ex. It's not a flattering comparison for Deus Ex. But
Yeah, for a game that's, like, about characters and, like, telling this epic story, like, the characters are A, really poorly told, and B, when we do get some of their storytelling, it's like...
It's pretty tropey.
It's tropey. It's also, like, not at all melding well with some of the humorism that is dominant. Like, finding out what the whole deal with Stiletto, Sly, and Fatima
Oh, Fatima. Do you want to explain the life cursor?
Fatima is your interactive cursor.
So your cursor, your cursor has a personality, and I thought, oh, okay, so it's like a weird virtual reality assistant. It's like Cortana from Halo. No. We later find out that Fatima is dead and has been resurrected by orders of Sly.
She's Sly's old partner who died in an accident, and
she was in love with him.
Against her wishes.
Yeah.
Sly puts her dead soul in your mouse cursor, basically.
And she becomes his AI assistant. So basically, if you've read Neuromancer,
you
know how the cowboy AI, who's like a cyber ghost of a hacker who got his brain fried, and you know how that's supposed to be like messed up and bad, and you're like, just let this guy die already. This is tragic. This is terrible. Well, what if you missed the point entirely from that book?
Not only that, like, you find out, like, she was gonna leave Sly because she was in love with him, but didn't get the courage to, like, tell him, and then realized that Sly was in love with Stiletto, and is like, I can't live this life anymore, I'm gonna move on, I hope that you live a better life without me. And yet, because she didn't get to tell that to him, he resurrects her as a
like
virtual
an AI
reality ghost, and now she's forced to be stuck as his assistant in an environment where her love for him will never be requited.
Yeah, it's weird and tragic in the same game where
we go to Democritus a second time, and it's every single bit from Catch-22, and it's all comedy. There's a part where we get even like the major reference of it's a military bureaucracy where you gotta know the chain of command to get anything done here. You can't just do it yourself. Funny, right?
It's very funny.
It's funny. And then tragedy.
Yeah, and then
there's that
also,
weirdly
also
touching scene
pathos.
There's that weirdly touching scene with Paco trying to rescue a girl in a prison so as that he can relearn his ability to be a hero. And then that's never spoken upon ever again. You actually have to read his like codex entry to find out the reason why he became an alcoholic is because his comic book series got canceled. It's like weird stuff like that, right? Like you don't bring up the specter of alcoholism and depression in a game that's supposed to be this joke delivery system. I don't know.
So the story, the plotting, the characters, it's a complete mess.
Absolutely.
Yes. It's like as I love to say, it has moxie. It has there was definitely some passion and intent behind it. I just don't think it worked.
But to its benefit, this is a highly unique world with highly unique things.
I'd say it's definitely noir-ish. Maybe not Cowboy Bebop adjacent, but a similar level of like we're all out in space and you can't go home again.
Like because all these planets are inside of a Dyson sphere, and that's supposed to be important at some point, right?
Yeah, it's weird, but Canadian dollars became the currency of the universe, so that must mean Earth exists somewhere because Canada exists.
Because loonies are the currency of the future.
But eventually we go to this planet called Hephaestus, and we find out what the actual story of this game is about. And it's 2/3 through the game.
Tell me what happens.
So there's these two forces. So there's a universe, the universe of Anachronox, and then there's a universe to the left of them, and there's a universe to the right of them. And one of those universes is the universe of order. This is literally what they say. And the other universe is the universe of chaos.
Chaos.
And order and chaos got into a war. Order eventually enslaved chaos in their universe, but chaos wished to escape. Order started to lose the war again, so they decided to push all of the forces of chaos into the universe of Sly Boots and our characters. And they even make a little witticisms like, well, ain't that some shit? which is very good. That was a very good bit. And then after we get this lore dump, we get captured by a supervillain, which is again a weird little like filler arc thing before we then land on Democritus a second time. But eventually we find that Chaos is enslaved in the current universe. There is a faction that is trying to release Chaos. They are the Dark Servants. They curiously look like Chaos Marines and the Forces of Chaos from 40K.
Don't worry about it.
But as a gift to hopefully fend off the Forces of Chaos, the Forces of Order gave the universe of Slyboots Mistech.
And that's where all the magic comes from.
Yeah. So they gave them magic to try and
Yeah.
All right, so there's a law hero, there's a chaos hero, there's a neutral hero, and you have 3 routes. You know, 3 endings. It depends on
which one do I get to kill Lucifer?
You kill Lucifer in the neutral and the law route.
Okay, which one do I get to kill Yahweh?
You kill Yahweh in the neutral route.
Okay, where does Krishna come into this?
Krishna is a secret boss that you can recruit after you beat him, but you need to be like level 99, and like you just by that point you're so powerful.
You got to fuse some really good demons.
Yeah, you got to fuse some really good demons at that point.
Okay, God, we should. So now I just want to play more Shin Megami Tensei.
Yeah, you do.
5.
But we had to fight the Forces of Chaos. Because, you know, the destruction.
Once again, all of this happens in the last 4 hours of the game.
Yep.
This 30-hour RPG, I would say, despite that length sounding like a plus, I think the game is intolerably slow.
It's too long, it's too slow. You get too little for what and then
it just kind of ends.
It just kind of ends because well, the weird thing about it is we have that weird thing where they decide to not save the universe so as that they can fight a mobster who's making super soldier clones.
Well, because the mobster was the original villain at the very beginning before the wider conflict happened.
Yeah.
So you're wrapping up that thread, and then they're going to go take care of the wider conflict. And you see, this is a 14-part story, and Anachronox 2 is going to be like parts 2 through 5, and then Anachronox 3.
So Yu Suzuki's original vision for Anachronox.
You got to be careful because we've got a Shenmue defender on the podcast today.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm the one that started the Shenmue joke. Now, if Anachronox had forklift racing, it would be a much better game.
It would.
There are vehicle sequences in this game. There's a weird FMV first-person ship sequence, on-rail ship sequence.
Yep. There's a rail shooting sequence. That's right.
Everyone loves rail shooters in the year 2001.
But we found out that there's a big tragic plot twist that doesn't get resolved because they did make a sequel to this game. One of our party members is a traitor.
I can say who it is.
Beard man.
Grumpos.
Grumpos.
He was bad guy the whole time.
He was a bad guy all the time.
He was on the side of chaos this entire time.
Yeah. And then we fight a dark servant.
And then you fight a dude who you've never seen for most of the rest of the game.
And it's like, I'm a big, bad, evil dude. And it's like, okay, I'm going to fight you.
On what I would say is a fairly obvious cliffhanger.
And
or maybe not a cliffhanger, but a to be continued.
hey man, this game celebrated its 23rd anniversary. Maybe by 25 it will
This game will never get a sequel.
I think
they will never finish the Legacy of Kain. They will never finish this. Eidos is a graveyard. They will never make a new Deus Ex.
I mean, Square opened up the rights for the Eidos properties they never used. So if someone wants to come along and has the funding, you could probably get
Embracer
the Anachronox.
Group. Give me a call.
Rights pretty cheap if you wanted to continue the story yourself.
It's funny because I found a quote from Tom Hall from 2010, and he said, "If I don't make the game in the next 10 years, I'll just write up the rest of the story and put it on my website for closure. How about that? Even do that? Even, so Square Enix.
Remember when what's his bucket? Was it Chet Falasek? Who wrote the draft for Half-Life?
Oh yeah, that's Chet.
Episode 3.
That might be Chet. There was a weird period of time where game...
No, it was Mark Laidlaw.
Oh, okay. There was a weird period of time when Anachronox had a second wind of popularity because of a Machinima film. So someone from Machinima.com, I believe Jack Hughes, decided to take all of the game's cutscenes and put them into a 2.5-hour film called Anachronox the Movie. And because it was the early internet, it was 13 MPEG files on Machinima.com. And people liked what they saw because they saw, I think, the technical tour de force side of... and they didn't have to play it. And it got to the point to where Machinima even thought about release footage and artwork and getting interviews and stuff. But then they realized, oh wait, this is just no one actually gives a shit.
No.
I know that sounds mean, but
the game was sent out to die on shelves.
Apparently Eidos wanted to cancel the project, but they actually held Tom Hall in high regard, and they felt well, this project's actually making progress, and we don't want to punish them for the shit show that's Daikatana. And so Eidos, essentially, when this was finally getting near shippable, as you pointed out earlier, is just ship it. Just push it out. We're done. We're done. We have no expectations of making a profit. Just, please, for the love of God, can this recoup its budget? No? Okay, we're just gonna... Salvage job. This is a salvage job.
Yeah,
Eidos was a very well-run publisher.
They wrapped up Ironstorm Dallas pretty much as this game was shipping, and then they let Warren Spector do his thing until he decided to leave, and then that's that for Ironstorm.
It's unique. It's interesting. I don't know if I recommend it, but it's interesting.
Of the white people who played Final Fantasy VII in the late 90s and tried to make their own, I'd say this is at least better than Sudeki.
Do you think it's better tan Septerracore?
Is it better than Septerracore? Yes.
Is it better
than Summoner?
Madness?
I mean, Shadow Madness is Kuso tier, I'm told. This game is not Kuso tier.
It's just
I
weird and
Shadow
frustrating.
Madness.
And that's kind of all I can really say about it.
It's misguided, but doesn't fall apart around you.
No.
And it's not nearly as slow and sluggish as Septerracore. This game, you go through the different environments.
We will not be playing Septerracore.
You go through the different environments at a somewhat reasonable pace.
Especially
slower
if you
than
don't
I
do the side
quests. Still. Yeah. I did all the side quests up to a certain point before I realized it was pointless, and I didn't need to do that.
Yeah, you did.
But
all right.
I think it's time to rank this.
Let's rank this.
Okay, let's rank this game.
All right. You can find our list at bit.ly/OTDE rank. Again, the universal... What does URL stand for?
Oh.
Universal... Really look up.
Universal routing lookup?
Uniform resource locator.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah, the uniform resource locator. is bit.ly/OTDE rank for your off the deep end list. And because I'm not Jeff and I just update the list while we're recording, you can find out where we rank things before the podcast even comes out. On our top 3, Might and Magic 6, The Mandate of Heaven, Suikoden, the first, and Xenosaga Episode 1, Der Wilsermacht. At the bottom, number 53, Unlimited Saga, number 54, Hoshiwo Mirohito, and the newly minted bottom of the list, maybe for a bit, is Descent to Undermountain. So, where do we think Anachronox rates?
Let's start at the line of mediocrity.
Okay, the line of mediocrity is number 25, Hybrid Heaven.
That's actually hard. That's actually hard.
I mean,
No,
I'll take Time and Eternity over this personally.
No.
Oh, wow.
No. That's you're
See,
poison
that-
pilled. You're poison pilled. You're irony poisoned. Irony
you are
poison
suffering
winding.
from Stockholm syndrome. Here's the thing. I would rather play this than Hybrid Heaven.
Yeah, probably.
I would rather play Risen than this.
So it goes above Hybrid Heaven, but below Risen.
I would put this above Hybrid Heaven.
Okay.
Personally,
Is this the new line of mediocrity?
it could be. We could do that. Our new number 25 is Anachronox, barely above the midpoint of,
Or maybe is the midpoint, depending on who you ask.
Basically the midpoint of this list. I believe technically Bahamut Lagoon is the midpoint right now, but that'll be it for that, gentlemen. But what are we doing next?
I think it's a grab. We pull from a fan
That's
pick.
right.
Or
We said we'd do a fan pick grab bag.
oh right.
Wait, a
So-
fanfic grab bag.
We have let some of the people who have donated to the Patreon, we have let them wait and stew for the last 3 years. So we're gonna clear out some stuff. We're gonna play some Boktai. We're gonna play some Saga 2, both the original and the remake on DS. And we'll probably play some other stuff on that list. I need to double check what we have. But for our next episode, we are going to start working on fan picks. We want you to feel like you have done good and not bad by supporting this podcast. Which, by the way, you can support this podcast at patreon.com/deeplistens. Our theme, Halfway, is done by SuperSex420. You can find them on Bandcamp. Borgmaster, you want to plug your shit?
Yeah, you can find me at 5thgengaming.blog and 5th Generation Gaming on Twitch. I'm reviewing 90s console games in the 32-bit era in order. It's a bad idea.
I showed someone your blogs, and they were like, "Does this Borgmaster guy like anything?"
No.
And it made me very happy. But yeah, you can find ZP and I on Twitch, and I think that'll be it. Remember to
drink some water and tell someone
remember
that's
to drink
close
water.
to you that you love them.
Remember to tell your parents that you love them, unless your parents suck.
The United States Computer History Museum opened its new exhibit. They put the PS2 with a copy of Final Fantasy X and Grand Theft Auto San Andreas in the retro gaming section.
Yeah, no, you are old and are going to die. There is no such thing as cheating in a single-player game. Goodbye.
And